Henshin go go baby, what's good guys? Yoku here, and I know a lot of you are trying to roll for Mommy Milky Himeko. I meant you were trying to reroll for Himeko. This video is here to help you guys understand and decide on your own which of the 5-star standard characters are the best ones for you to roll for. And with that being said, this video is not only here to help you choose which of the 5-star standard characters are going to be the best for you to pick. Didn't I already say that by choosing to... This video is also sponsored by BlueStack. And in order to get BlueStacks started, you're going to go ahead and click the link in my description down below. That's going to take you to this website here. And then once you're on this website, just go ahead and click play Honkai Star Rail on PC, and then boom, your download starts. Now from there, you're going to look at a tiny blue square for just a little bit. Once that's done though, you're going to have to do a few things. During this install process, I'm going to help you save some time. On your desktop, you're going to type in turn Windows features on or off. Something's going to pop up. You click that, looks like a little folder icon. In the folder icon, you're going to look for something called Hyper-V. That's also a folder. When you click on this Hyper-V, it's going to enable it. Then you're going to restart your PC and finish up the BlueStacks install. Once you do this, BlueStacks opens up. You can see the nice layout, just like an emulator, just like Android. You're going to click Honkai Star Rail's icon. That's going to boot up the game, load it up, set your settings however you want to. And then once it's in there, log in just like normal, go through your 2-step process. No, you can't see what my email is. And then, well, bam, you are now ready to re-roll 50 different accounts if your PC can handle that. And I hope that you get whoever you're looking for, but just remember, Mommy Himeko supremacy. Now, let me go ahead and go over all the different standard characters and why they are who they are. Now, do note that there is no particular process when it comes to progressing through the beginning of the game. Unfortunately, we do not have a skip dialogue or skip cutscene button, and what that means is you are stuck watching the entire cutscene until it's done, and there's nothing you can do about it. That in mind, most of the time spent on your character collecting process is going to be through the story mode. Within the first 20 to 30 minutes, you should be able to get through the tutorial of the game, or at least the start of the tutorial of the game, and you will receive your first 20 pulls. You can of course shoot for this and try and get your 5 stars out of the box, but you know, it is what it is. Now, I personally recommend, if I were going to be doing this process and I wanted my 5-star character as fast as possible, I would play the game up to the point where I can get my 40 pulls, and then I'm going to use that on the beginner warp. Now, there is a method that people were discussing doing during the CBT3, and they're probably going to bring this over into the official game, where they pretty much play the game until they get the 20 warps, your tickets from the mail, so 10 to 15 minutes of game time. They shoot for what they can, and then they go away and they repeat the process. The problem with this is when you're doing this on the actual standard banner, the one that has 300 pity, there is a 0.3% chance that you are going to get a 5-star. Not a 5-star character either, a 5-star. That means that you have 7, right? 1 out of 7 chances to get the character that you're looking for. And then you also have the light cones that are also in there. So it's too much. I really don't recommend doing that unless you don't care what you get. Then sure. The reason that people are doing this is because the game is going to give you that character, and since it doesn't go away, right? It's standard pity. It's going to be there. And then after that, the beginner warp will give you enough tickets to be able to go through the beginner warp and then get another 5-star character. But do keep in mind, and this is something that I've been trying to mention to everybody that watches my videos, you get enough no matter how you do it. You will get enough ticket from the start of the game to before Jingyuen's banner comes out to be able to hit pity on the beginner warp and also hit pity on the standard banner.
Oh, EO, you don't know that. How could you say such a thing? This is a lie.
I personally did this during CBT3 because my luck is bad. So I'm telling you this from experience. This is not me guesstimating whether or not you can do it. I went all the way to the 40th pull, literally the 40th pull in the beginner banner. And then I went all the way to 79 on the standard banner. And I was still able to get what I needed. With all of that said, play the game how you want to play the game. Without further ado, let's go into the characters. Out of the 7, I'm going to pretty much list these from the very first thing. I'm not even going to waste any more time. The very first character is going to be the #1 character I think is worth re-rolling for. And then I'm just going to go down the list. By the time this video is live, you guys should have the official changes in the game from what happened in CBT3 to the final launch. And I will say that Bronya was going to be my #1. Bronya is technically still my #1. But now it's tied. Bronya and Bailu are now my #1 characters that I would say are worth re-rolling for. I can't put one above the other, and the reason I can't do that so confidently is because it completely comes down to you, the player, and what you value out of the team that you're building. early on, Bronya is not the character that everyone makes her out to be. She is not some broken unit. She's not going to take your team from 0 to hero incredibly quick. No, you don't see any value from Bronya the way that you want to see value from her until about level 40, level 50, somewhere around that ballpark where you're getting towards the closer to late game content, if you will, and then it goes from there. What makes Bronya so strong is the fact that she can fit on a lot of teams, but Bronya's buffs amplify whatever you already have. So if you already have amazing stats, Bronya buffs that. But if you have weak or ass stats, then Bronya is just gonna buff weak stats. It's not gonna be strong. Now, when it comes to Bailu, Bailu is great all the way across the board. And note, both of these characters are somewhat resistant to power creep. I know that's something that a lot of people care about when it comes to the gacha-related games. Bailu is going to be a great character, especially when you start going into Forgotten Hall, Memory of Chaos, and even in the simulated universe. As a whole, Bailu is great. She keeps the entire team alive. She heals multiple characters on the team. Even though it's at random, it's still out of 4. She does it 3 out of 4 times. Someone's going to get healed up. Her ultimate is amazing. It heals everybody, and her passive is going to automatically revive anyone that falls down. If you just happen to get a bunch of constellations of Bailu, then she can revive twice instead of 1 time. But note, this is per battle, so there are going to be a lot of battles, and per battle, by the way, counts as different turn orders. So when it says 1 out of 3, 2 out of 3, or 3 out of 3, Bailu can res each of those times. So that first spot ultimately comes down to what it is that you want in your team. Now, number 2 is personally for me, but I will give this to you guys. Number 2 for me is Himeko. I have a video talking all about Himeko later on, or relatively soon, sometime this week. Basically, Himeko got a huge buff when it comes to Honkai Star Rail, and from CBT 3 to final release, she got exactly what she needed. Now all of her skills, anything that Himeko does, skills, follow-up attacks, basic attacks, they all have a high percentage or high chance to burn the enemy. And then when you couple that with her traces, now all the enemies that are burned take 20% more damage. She also gets a trace, if I'm not mistaken, for 20% more skill damage. And then of course you add on to, I can make a break build with Himeko. I can make an effect hit rate build. I hit multiple enemies at one time. I can pair her with a single target DPS. There's a lot about Himeko going into the game that is going to skyrocket. And I feel like once players really start to understand the builds and how things work, and that there's not one true build of a character in Star Rail, Himeko is going to jump up there immediately to S tier, if not higher. So for me personally, Himeko is what I would consider number 2, since Bailu and Bronya are kind of like 1 and 1. They're tied for number 1, but Himeko would be my number 2 spot, my second most desired when it comes to pulling for the character. She's one of those characters that is just gonna be great all around the board, especially if you build into her correctly. Number 3 is gonna be Clara. Now, Clara's a little bit weird. I say Clara because honestly, Clara just does an insane amount of damage. There's really nothing else to it. She counterattacks, she sets up Savrog, and Savrog is gonna protect the entire party, and then she punishes everybody in the game. There's an enemy in the game that basically punishes you for doing the thing that it tells you don't do. So if it says anyone that uses skills that attacks this enemy or attacks this maiden will be heavily punished, just don't use skills. Sometimes you can't avoid it though, like a basic attack and you have no skill points. Think of Clara that way, but now that maiden is on your team, right? You know, now you have Savrog. Regardless, Clara is amazing. Now, the downside to Clara is that you need to build your team around her. I've said this in like 2 or 3 of my videos already. Clara is not the character you just splash on your team. She is not a splashable character. You're not going to just throw Clara on your team of 3 DPSs and call it a day. Clara is the one that you need to build the team around. She is basically your main DPS at that point, or if you can work it, your sub DPS. But ultimately, it works out for Clara. Number 4 is going to be Gepard, who shot up tremendously in my rankings. Before, Gepard was actually my last character, and now Gepard is actually going to be my 3rd and 4th character, because Gepard himself, he comes in handy so much when it comes to Forgotten Hall, Simulated Universe. A lot of the challenging content that you're going to come across is going to be very difficult, especially for free-to-play players. Now, if you happen to get Gepard in your 1st or 2nd 5-star role, awesome. You are golden. You're good. Honestly, you don't even have to re-roll anybody. Like, if you accidentally get Gepard, it's okay. I promise you that getting Gepard and then just kind of casually floating through the rest of the game and getting another 5-star later for your DPS will be leagues better than you shooting for Bronya and then struggling because you don't have a solid support or defensive unit to help carry you through whatever content you're doing. Now, admittedly, yes, Fire MC is going to give you shields, and they're going to give you shields all around the board, right? The entire team gets it. The shields from the Fire MC are not strong. I don't mean that they can't take a hit. I mean that they don't have a lot of HP behind them. which means strong attacks or strong enemy attacks will blow through those shields and then still do damage to your character. Not only does Gepard apply shields to the entire party, but the shields are insanely strong. Because of that, and because of how I've expressed that shields are really strong in this game comparison to heals, most of the time you don't even need a healer on a team with Gepard because of how strong the shield is. By the time the shield would break, he gets his ultimate again, you just redo it and the shields get reapplied. The next character I want to talk about in this list is going to be Yangqing. Yangqing is someone who I got during the CBT3 beta and I loved him. I think with the right kit, Yangqing can be an amazing character. However, Yangqing suffers from having to keep his buff up at all times, or at least trying to keep his buff up at all times. And the way that it works is a little bit wonky. I have a whole beginner's guide that's going to come out for Yangqing that you guys can check out soon. I'll link it down below and it'll be right up here in the little eye bubble as you're listening to me talk. But Yangqing in this case is one of the characters where, yes, he's a great damage dealer. He's going to do a lot of damage. He's not slow, and he gives you the benefit of consistently freezing enemies. Not only that, but he self-buffs himself with crit rate and crit damage, which is insanely strong early game, and it comes in clutch late game as well. He easily reaches 100% crit rate, like I expressed in my guide video. The problem is that being single target DPS, it's harder for him to keep these buffs up. If he gets hit at all, it's gone. Whatever the empathic sword link buff was, it's gone. You don't have it anymore. And then on top of that, a lot of Yangqing comes from his light cone. So giving Yangqing one light cone over the other completely changes the way that Yangqing is allowed to play. With Yangqing and his own signature light cone, now you're not worried about crit rating as much or hitting a crit, because the light cone is going to trigger, that's his second passive, and then it's going to give you so much crit rate that your next attack will crit no matter what. So now, coupled with the crit damage that he's already built into, and he has an insanely high crit damage number, this helps out with that. Again, however, it's just really inconsistent to be able to keep all this stuff going at the same time. And for someone to be rolling for Yangqing as their first 5-star character over the other characters that I listed, you gotta really like Yangqing and you gotta really know what you're doing. But early on, I just can't imagine anyone doing that, especially as free to play, because there's so much that you could get away with while getting a more supportive unit for your team as your first 5-star. My last character is going to be Welt, which is the debuffer, and Welt is Welt is my guy, right? Welt is great. I like Welt. I like the ability to slow my enemies down so that they can't move. The problem with Welt is while I'm slowing my enemies down, I still need to be able to act faster than the enemy. Early on, I don't think Welt is as strong as he will be. Later in the game, I think Welt will be stronger paired with some units that have more speed. Once we get into the whole relic meta and we start to understand and look at, okay, we can add 60 speed to my boots or 60 speed overall. I've now increased my speed from 120 to 160. I can attack 2 times per turn now. Once we start to get to that ballpark, now Welt is really going to come into play, because now Welt can slow them down. You can attack 2, maybe 3 or 4 times now before the enemy actually gets to go, and then Welt gets to keep reducing their speed with the imprisonment status. So for your starter 5-star character, I just can't recommend Welt, because there's nothing in the game early on that can really utilize Welt's potential. But later in the game, yes. And with all of that said, that is going to be my who you should choose 5-star, or how you should choose your 5-star when it comes to starting Honkai Star Rail. And again, if you guys want to have a more hastened or quickened progress when it comes to choosing your 5-star character, you can use BlueStacks down below. Install it super quick, mad easy, and you can run multiple instances, if your PC is strong enough, of BlueStacks so that you can pick multiple 5-star characters at one time. Do let me know who you are choosing as your 5-star character. Like the video, comment, subscribe, all that fun stuff. I can't say my usual outro because it's inappropriate for YouTube. Smell you later.